What is going on, everyone? It's Sergeant Roger right here. And as some of you may have noticed, I have actually not uploaded yesterday. And the reason for that is because of my laptop battery. Basically, my laptop is kind of old, so it's failing. So yeah, I actually thought I wasn't going to be recording for a week, because I'd take it to the repair place. But they actually said that they couldn't repair it. I have to get a whole new one. So, the good news is, it won't be a whole week without uploads. But the bad news is, I will have to pay a lot of money for a new battery. Which sucks. Actually, it's not that bad. Maybe there's some good, cheap batteries. I don't even... What? Go away. I really don't care. There's notification, but... yeah, part 13. I'm very excited. It's going to be the conclusion of all of this. It'll be very cool. This is literally uploaded like 2 months ago. Oh my gosh, it's already December. How is it December? Where did the time go? But anyways, let's get started.
Hey guys, the Battle of Cannae has 3 chapters. If you missed the previous one, you can find it here.
Yes. Thank you for that.
In front of Varro on a sweltering August 2nd, the battle standard in front of Varro's tent signaled to the troops to array for battle. As the gusts of southwesterly Volturnus wind raised clouds of fine dust across the dry Apulian soil, for the next several hours, army officers closely supervised the complex deployment to ensure that the legions would form in the correct order. Varro and the rest of the Roman leadership decided to show the enemy their willingness to fight. However, they had no way of knowing if the Carthaginians would accept a battle in this new location.
Come on, really? Maybe the Romans are... I just like the Romans. They keep getting destroyed. And then they come back, and they expect a different result. So dumb.
But then, Hannibal led his troops through the gates.
If he is accepting a battle with you, then you know something is up. Especially since you're outnumbered. You know something is about to happen. If he's going to fight against you while he's outnumbered, you already know. Then again, it's like an open field. I don't really know what Hannibal could possibly do. You know what, he's a tricky fellow, you know what I mean? He's a tricky fellow. We'll just have to see.
And as a fan of our channel...
or maybe he just won't do anything at all. It'll just be a regular battle.
And
Also, tomorrow we're reacting to another user-requested video. It's one of those tank videos again by, I think it's by the Chieftain. But yeah, someone requested it. I'll be reacting to that 2 days, I think? In 2 days? Yeah, maybe. I think so.
The two armies crossed the river Aufidius at various points and marched onto the dust-blown flat plain below the town of Cannae. Yet the Romans still weren't sure that Hannibal would give battle, so they left a 10,000-strong
Oh yeah, I forgot they were over there.
garrison in the main camp. It was Paulus who insisted on this, arguing that besides guarding the baggage, this force could also threaten Hannibal's camp and cut off his line of retreat once the battle went in favor of the Romans.
Smart.
However, Hannibal wasted no time in deploying his army, sending out his light troops to form a protective screen for the main body. Varro too sent out the velites to mask the process of deployment from the enemy. There are suggestions that the Roman leadership didn't actually expect the more mobile Carthaginians to fight on such a narrow and confined battlefield, and merely wanted to deploy the legions in front of the enemy to boost morale.
They didn't think Hannibal could fight on such a narrow place? You have more people than they do. If you can do it, then most likely so can they. Especially since you have more people than they do, like by 2 times the amount. That's just okay.
And rebuild their confidence after being humiliated the day before for refusing to fight. Such...
Oh my gosh, something tells me that Hannibal might actually get defeated though, since this is the last episode. Oh, that's sad because I liked watching Hannibal crush everyone.
Practices of building up the confidence of the men were common in the battles of this period, but it is far more probable that the Romans did, in fact, fully intend to fight this battle on the ground of their own choosing. Whatever the case, Hannibal is said to have had 40,000 infantry and 10,000 horse, while the Romans fielded around
Okay, so it's not twice the amount. It's a lot. It's less than twice the amount.
70,000 infantry and 6,400 cavalry. Varro placed a screen of around 15,000 velitus in front of the main line. 4,000 allied horse were positioned on the left under his direct command, while Paulus was in charge of the 2,400 Roman cavalry deployed on the right. To compensate for their numerical inferiority, the squadrons of horsemen were packed in a tighter formation, with no more than 1.5 meters between each rider. Room to maneuver the horses wasn't necessary, as their role would be purely defensive, while the infantry drove the attack forward. Regular Roman infantry was mixed with the cavalry to give more stability to the static squadrons. Servilius commanded the 55,000 Roman legionaries and allied troops in the center, arrayed in a much deeper and more tightly packed triplex Achis. Varro used the overstrength maniples to add depth to the infantry formations. Furthermore, he reduced the gaps between the lines to bring the full weight of the legions to bear, aiming to overwhelm the enemy. He knew that at Trasimene, the Roman heavy infantry held off the Carthaginians for hours, inflicting significant losses, despite being in an unfavorable position. And the year prior to that at Trebia, the legions hacked their way through the Carthaginian center, getting the better of both the Gauls and several contingents of Libyans, Hannibal's best infantry. It's worth noting that the tighter maniple formations restricted the tactical flexibility, but eased the coordination of the massive army, and, more importantly, the deeper formations possessed longer endurance in a direct confrontation. Thus, the Roman leadership was confident that the legions can outmatch the enemy and crush Hannibal's center yet again.
Yeah. Just look at how many troops they have on the center compared to them. Like, that's just crazy. Hannibal really needs to focus on his cavalry and use that to his advantage. Like, part of me was thinking for him to have all of his cavalry on just on one side, and then concentrate the entire force when it's needed the most, since that's their advantage.
To achieve this, Varro chose the battlefield wisely. He packed the legions on a narrow front, with the river and the hills near Cannae protecting the flanks from envelopment. This would force the Carthaginian horsemen into a frontal charge, and the Roman cavalry was tasked with
Also, let's think about this. What's the reason why Hannibal won, like most of his battles? Because he used tricks and traps. Now, he can't really do that. So, I mean, there's people that can argue Hannibal's a really good general. Of course, he's gonna crush them, right? Those people aren't as good. You gotta remember, most of his prestige comes from traps, and it doesn't look like he can do very much of that here.
Delaying long enough for the legions to finish the job. If they could break through the Punic center, it wouldn't matter if the weaker Roman horse lost a fight on the wings, because at that point the Carthaginian cavalry couldn't do much more than harass the large block of legions. The selection of the battle...
That's why I'm saying it's good to concentrate them. So you actually have a chance of knocking them off balance.
Ground at Cannae could allow the heavy infantry to smash their Punic enemy. We do not know if Varro alone planned this, or if he was assisted by Paulus, Servilius, and other members of the Roman leadership. The Roman plan was simple but efficient. Meanwhile, Hannibal placed around 6,000 Spanish skirmishers and up to 2,000 renowned Balearic slingers as a screening force in front of the army, instructing them to raise as much dust as possible to hide the disposition of the troops.
Oh my gosh, literally. Hannibal always finds a way with some kind of... Well, not really a trick, but... You know, just some kind of advantage he can get over his enemies.
Behind them formed the close order infantry, with 21,000 Gallic warriors making up the bulk of the main line. 3,000 veteran Spanish infantry were interspersed to strengthen the center. But, unlike at Trebia, where his main line collapsed because he amassed all of his infantry to try and match the Romans, and didn't keep any reserves for decisive action and to plug the gaps in the line, this time he positioned the 8,000 Libyans, his best, most disciplined men, in the rear, hiding them from view behind the formations in the front. On the Punic right were 4,000 Numidian horsemen, commanded by Hanno, tasked with holding the flank, while on the opposite side, the Carthaginian general placed 2,000 Spanish and 4,000 Gallic cavalry under the command of Hasdrubal, planning to overload the left flank in a direct attack on the Roman right, hoping to smash the enemy cavalry and threaten the legions from the rear. Neither side was intimidated by the other. Gallic and Spanish troops had the confidence of past victories against the legions, while the Romans trusted in their superior numbers, remembering that even in prior defeats, their heavy infantry often prevailed in hand-to-hand combat against the Punic troops. Then, around midday, like a lumbering beast, the Roman formation...
Oh yeah, what about that, like, kid and his father who was hunting? He said that he was, like, all over there.
Moved forward. The Carthaginian cavalry on the...
Look at this, this is...
left led the line, trotting at pace, while the light infantry of both armies moved ahead of the main lines to open the engagement. Now, hidden behind the dust raised by the screen of skirmishers, Hannibal made his move, advancing with the main line to form a crescent formation that would bulge towards the enemy.
Also, I think it's kind of funny, like, you saw in the picture, earlier you saw the battlefield, over here, the cavalry, it looked like there was twice the amount of cavalry, because, you know, there was 6 squares, and there was 3 squares here. But now that it's showing it like this, the individual, like, units, not the units, but, like, whatever those circle box thingies are, those circles, there's actually more Carthaginian cavalry on this side, which is interesting.
He understood that the Romans chose this narrow battlefield to deploy their army as a battering ram, and that his outnumbered infantry stood no chance of stopping the legions if they tried matching them man for man. Therefore, the bulged line was supposed to absorb the attack and then slowly retreat, to buy time until the cavalry attack on the left unfolded. Hannibal personally commanded the troops in the center with the help of his youngest brother Mago, for these troops would bear the brunt of the Roman assault, and it was vital that they held out as long as possible. As the skirmishing between the light troops began in the middle of the field, Carthaginian riders on the left advanced full tilt towards the Roman citizen cavalry.
Those poor cavalry, they're gonna get completely slaughtered.
With veteran officers leading the way, the Spanish and Gallic squadrons stayed compact, doubling up on and dispersing the first lines of Roman horsemen, quickly penetrating their formation. Some of the Roman riders dismounted to fight on foot. The Carthaginians swarmed their positions, dragging their opponents from their seats. But despite outnumbering the Romans 3-1,
Oh no! What? No! What's gonna happen?
the confined space largely negated the numerical advantage of the Punic riders, and Hasdrubal did well to tightly control his men, managing to overwhelm the Romans in a brief, furious charge. The Roman cavalry couldn't cope, and most of them broke and fled, with the Carthaginians now in hot
Oh no! What did I do? Oh.
pursuit. Others huddled together to hold off the Punic onslaught for as long as possible. Paulus himself escaped the carnage with his retinue and moved to rejoin the fighting in the center.
Of houses.
Meanwhile, on the opposite flank, the Numidians pinned down the allied Italian cavalry with hit and run attacks, with neither side able to gain an advantage. In the center, after a long exchange of projectiles, the skirmishers retreated behind the close order infantry as the Roman legions closed in. The mass order long exchange legionaries must have been an intimidating sight, advancing slowly while clashing their weapons against the wooden shields, whilst the trumpeters added to the cacophony of noise. As an almost solid mass of rank upon rank of armored legionaries clashed with the enemy, Hannibal's advanced center narrowed the width of the initial contact, reducing the deadly momentum of the Roman attack. The bare-chested Gauls, hacking at the enemy with their long slashing swords, and the Spanish in their white tunics, thrusting forward with their short blades, stood firm and held back the enemy for a time. But as more Roman troops entered the fray, the weight of the legions drove back the mixed Punic formation. Roman velators supported the attack, while the Carthaginian light footmen were ordered to reinforce the flanks of the infantry.
Oh my God.
Hannibal and his officers barked orders at the men, telling them to stand off the Roman assault.
I can't even like imagine being one of the soldiers there. That just seems horrifying. Especially one of the Carthaginians in the center. Like, you just see this massive wave of Romans. That is just crazy. Like, it's just so amazing how people could have done that back then. Just, like, stand there with a bunch of other people, knowing that you're probably gonna die.
And slowly move back. Already overwhelmed by the wall of scutum shields pushing them back, ordering the troops to retreat further in the face of the enemy was fraught with risks. All it would take is a few men buckling under pressure to cause slight cracks in the line that could quickly break the formation and turn into a rout.
Wait,
But the Carthaginian general and his Punic
what are these troops back here again? I forgot.
captains led from the front, fighting alongside
And what's going on with the cavalry up there? What are they gonna do?
the troops in the first lines, encouraging the men to hold their nerve, carefully controlling their withdrawal. Hannibal knew that he had to stay in the fight and buy time until events elsewhere on the field unfolded, and for now, the line held. Close to the hills on the right, the light Numidian horsemen fought in small groups, throwing their javelins and rapidly retreating before the enemy could pin them down. However, their attacks caused very little damage, and Varro simply remained in place, making no effort to drive them back. The main role of the Roman cavalry was to prevent the enemy from flanking the infantry formation long enough until the main assault of the legions broke through the center. But, on the other flank, the superior Carthaginian horse have by now decimated the Roman cavalry, completely routing them from the field. Next, Hasdrubal could move against the rear of the Roman center, or help surround Varro's allied cavalry on the right.
I suggest fighting the guys on the right. So that way with the Numidian cavalry, they can just completely take these troops on the side off guard. And just knock them completely off balance. That's my suggestion. But if they just go right there, like, yeah, initially it seems like it'll be good. But I think long term the Romans will be able to hold just because of how many freaking people there are.
But first, he had to regroup, and allow his men and horses time
Like, just that seems like it's a lot more risky.
to rest, who were by now exhausted from pursuing the fleeing enemy cavalry.
Okay.
Back in the center, as the Carthaginian infantry fell back before them, the Romans pressed on, prodding and cutting through the retreating enemy line. Sword in hand, the centurions and tribunes shouted orders through the deafening noise of the screams and the clattering of weapons, urging the maniples to charge together, sending more and more men into the concaved Punic center, which seemed like it will soon break.
What are these troops in the back doing? They should be helping. Seriously.
Conversely, Hannibal and Mago pushed the men to resist a while longer, trying to gain every precious second, hoping that the Spanish and Gallic cavalry will come to their aid. But as more and more legionaries were drawn inward,
No, so right. Oh no.
the Roman breakthrough was inevitable, and the pressure on the center finally broke the Punic line. The Gauls and Spanish at first moved back facing the enemy, with flurries of fighting still occurring, but before long they turned and routed.
Routed.
With the enemy now on the run, Paulus and Servilius poured more men into the gap, refusing to give the Carthaginians any chance to rally, and
Okay, now I think they should attack. The cavalry should attack in the center. I think now, because like at this point, they need that, or they're gonna
reform their lines. The overcrowded Roman center surged forward into the salient. Hannibal's infantry on either side of the gaping hole managed to maintain their lines, but were nevertheless forced to retreat in good order. Meanwhile, up the field,
What's the cavalry doing? What are they
Hasdrubal had
doing?
reformed his squadrons and charged at
Thank
Varro's formation, realizing that he could not move against the legions in the center before the threat of Roman cavalry was removed.
Yeah.
Until now, Varro successfully held the flank, but seeing the incoming Carthaginians, the consul knew that the Roman cavalry on the other wing must have routed, and he could not see what was going on in the center. Unsure if the day was lost, and facing annihilation himself against a force 3 times his own, Varro fled the field. The Numidians gave chase, while Hasdrubal once again had to stop to rest and reform his cavalry, before he could turn them toward
Oh god, are they gonna escape in time though? It looks the cavalry are close now.
towards the rear of the Roman infantry.
Okay, yeah, they.
Back in the center, legionaries in their tens of thousands pressed forward to complete the rout of the enemy. As they advanced into the gap, the maniples lost all cohesion, turning into a disorganized mob that rushed forward, with their officers barely able to control small groups of men in their own immediate vicinity. This mattered little, however, as the Romans could taste victory, having punched straight through the enemy's center. Hannibal relied on trickery and ruse in his prior victories, but it now seemed that the clear field at Cannae offered no possibility for him to set up an ambush.
What are these cavalry doing right now? What are these cavalry doing right now? Do something, please. You're gonna...
But, as the mass of Romans streamed forward, they found themselves between the columns of Libyan infantry that moved against the pursuing troops. Incredibly, the Carthaginian general outwitted the Romans yet again.
Did they not see that before? Like, this, like freaking Viro, or whatever his name is, Viro, you can see the cavalry from like a billion gajillion miles away, but these guys can't see the troops that are like right there. That's ridiculous.
By carefully masking the position of the Libyans behind his troops in the front,
Like, I mean, you could say, oh, well, they're fighting a lot. I mean, these guys are also fighting against the Median, like, cavalry, too.
and using the clouds of dust raised by the fighting, Hannibal concealed his best infantry
Oh, well, it just explained for us, okay.
from the enemy on an open field.
Hannibal, you absolute mad lad, you are crazy. Oh my gosh. Oh goodness, oh goodness.
Luring the greatest army Rome has ever assembled into an ambush set in plain view.
They're gonna be like completely encircled. These troops are gonna be right here. The cavalry right behind.
In effect, letting the legions outflank themselves. As the Libyans pressed the overextended and disorganized mass on both sides, the momentum of the Roman attack
They're gonna be completely encircled. Oh
dissolved, and the troops were no longer under anyone's control. Hannibal and Mago rallied most of the routing Gallic and Spanish troops, turning to rejoin the fighting, while on the opposite side of the field, Hasdrubal charged into the rear of the enemy infantry. As the compression of the legions began, the utter defeat of the Roman army was now inevitable.
They can't even run. They can't even run. They're just in circle. Oh my god. They can't even run. They can't even row. They can't even run. Oh my gosh. The Romans. The Romans. The only hope for them now is for them to break through this area and then try to make a breakthrough. Maybe these guys here can make some kind of breakthrough. Who knows?
With the maniples hopelessly
And the Romans could still win. Don't count them out. Yeah.
intermingled, they could no longer reform their lines. To make matters worse, Libyan troops looked similar to Roman legionaries, having
Oh god.
been equipped with Roman armor, helmets, and shields that they stripped from the dead at Trebia, Trasimene, and Geronium. The legionaries felt they were no longer
Oh, it's bad for both sides, technically, if they're dressed up as Romans.
protected on the flanks, and with the enemy seemingly amongst them, their nervousness soon turned to panic. Hannibal turned the strength of the Roman infantry, their deep, overwhelming formation, against them. As their ranks contracted under the pressure of multiple attacks, centurions and tribunes tried in vain to improvise, as movement became ever harder in the confined space.
They're so crowded, look at them.
Paulus and Servilius fought heroically,
Oh my gosh, Paulus.
leading a stiff resistance, but both were eventually cut down during the fighting.
Oh no.
Small groups of legionaries tried forming rough formations, but most were too exhausted and stood no chance against the fresh Libyans who were kept in reserve for most of the day. Some of the Roman troops, weary and fatigued, simply gave up, no longer having the strength to raise their weapons. As the hours passed, the battle became a one-sided massacre. The fighting went on until dark.
Oh my
There was
God.
little to no tactical sophistication in this final stage of the battle, as the Carthaginians systematically slaughtered most of the trapped infantry. In the end, widespread Roman resistance collapsed, and those who had any strength left in them managed to flee towards the Roman camps and the nearby towns.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Hannibal had won an unbelievable victory. By sundown, some 50,000 Roman infantry and 2,700 cavalry lay dead or dying.
Holy.
On the field.
Whoa! Whoa! Oh my gosh! Oh, yeah.
At Cannae. The gory sight gave pause even to the most hardened of observers, as nearly 3,000 tons of human flesh was left to rot in the August sun, the true fruits of Hannibal's tactical masterpiece. But achieving this slaughter cost Hannibal dearly. 5,700 of his men fell, a high figure for a victorious army in ancient times, which is testament to the harsh fighting on the day. Although it is worth noting that the Carthaginians were significantly outnumbered until the very end of the battle, which also played a role in the relatively high casualty. Very end of the battle, which Consul Paulus, Proconsul Servilius, and Marcus Minucius Rufus were killed in the battle, along with...
They got some of their senators in the battle, remember? They got some of their senators. I forgot about that.
With 80 senators, 2 quaestors, 29 out of 48 military tribunes, some 300 equestrians, with many others captured and enslaved.
Whoa.
Never has there been...
What's an equestrian? And what is a questor?
...in a defeat that struck so hard at the very heart of Roman society. And as night fell on August 2nd, 216 BC, Rome's very future was left in doubt. Credit goes to our awesome patrons who make videos like this one possible. Consider joining them to support our work. You can also support us by subscribing to our channel.
And that was last episode, what? But they were gonna lose. I thought they were gonna lose, because it's the last episode. Are they gonna have another one? Was it the last one? Was it the last one? Was it the last one? Please don't be the last one. God, oh man. Hannibal, you are crazy. Look at me, Hannibal. You are crazy. Oh my god. Okay, well, thank you all for watching. I need to still process. Hannibal's crazy. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello everyone, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe to my channel. And turn on the notification bell thingy. And if you didn't, then make sure to leave a thumbs down. Oh yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. And while you're at it, go ahead and watch my other videos. They're probably just as good, and if not better than this one right now. Except for my oldest videos, don't watch those. And, subscribe to these people down here, my fellow sergeants. They're other YouTubers that I either know or I have in high regards. Yeah, even my cat agrees. So, thank you for watching, and have a great day.